channel. So today I'm going to be bringing you a NFL draft video. In this video, I'm going to go through each and every NFL team and say what the one and or two most important positions in need they need to target based on where their team is currently at in terms of personnel. Now, you can see the glare on the screen over there. That's just my laptop, which I'm going to be using to basically just keep track of what teams I've already done and what teams I haven't. So we're going to start with the AFC East and the Buffalo Bills. So Buffalo is actually really close to being able to compete yearly with the personnel they have. But one player I think that would, or one position that I think they should definitely look into is probably halfback on the offensive side or wide receiver, since I really think they do need another weapon, and if you want to, you can also get a second tight end. Or if you have to target defense, I think you got to target maybe the secondary, because I think the front seven, even with some of the departures they've had, are still pretty damn dominant. So that's why I'm saying secondary, even though I know their secondary is not that bad either. Next, Miami Dolphins. Miami's a young team, easily on the rise. I do think that with the Dolphins, they need a slight help on more offense than defense. With that being said, I'm thinking maybe an O-lineman or a skill position player like wide receiver. Otherwise, I can't really think of anything Miami needs for sure, besides maybe some depth or some people to maybe even compete for starting jobs. But I think the two things I mentioned is what they'll definitely need the most. New England. Now, New England kind of spent a lot of their money in free agency, so I don't actually think they need anything. But if they did want to get something, they could go wide receiver, even though they signed two out of free agency. They can get if they can get a rookie early, that would be a good idea. However, it's rumored that they're supposed to try to trade with the Dolphins. If you do trade with the Dolphins, you might want to draft a quarterback, because Cam, I honestly think, even with the weapons, is not the answer, but we'll see. And I don't think Jared Stidham is either, but you need a long-term option, and Cam I don't think is a long-term option. So quarterback, wide receiver, or tight end would be, not even tight end actually. Wide receiver, quarterback, or if you have to look at the defensive side, I'd say middle linebacker maybe, because Hightower is getting old and needs someone to take over for him when he does retire. Or maybe some help in the secondary. Next, let's do New York Jets. Now, Jets are obviously a dumpster fire as per usual. They're going to need quarterback. I think that's what they use their first pick on. But what else do they need? They need a lot. Wide receiver would be a good idea for them. Tight end would be a good idea. Halfback would be a good idea. Maybe a lineman, and basically half of their defense can get better. So they can kind of just go about just about anywhere with, the best player available mindset, and they'll still probably end up having a pretty good draft. Now let's hop over to the NFC East. Dallas's defense is really bad, so anybody on the defensive side would be good. I'd say mainly D-line and secondary need help, though. They did sign safeties in the free agency, or traded for them, one or the other. And so I think they have to focus on corner and maybe linebacker or D-line. It has to be one of those three that they target first and then the second. Giants, I think if Daniel Jones continues to develop, you don't have to worry about quarterback, and you don't need to worry about halfback. You just got Galladay, so you got a wide receiver. So I'm going to say you need a offensive lineman and maybe a little bit more help in the front seven for the Giants. Philadelphia needs all the help. Wide receiver, linebacker, and secondary. That's what they need, and if you want to be specific for secondary, you need safeties and at least one corner. I think Darius Slay, if you can get a good enough corner in the draft, then you can definitely have a decent enough defense where one player doesn't have to worry about covering all of the secondary. Washington football team. Now, they had a change of guard at quarterback. They're going to have Ryan Fitzpatrick. Alex Smith has retired. And in my opinion, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick can probably lead the team pretty easily. And you do have a backup quarterback already. You already have an approaching halfback that's pretty good and wide receivers that are decent. I'd say on the offensive side, get an O-line or a tight end. On the defensive side, I think your defense is stellar, but I'd say get some backup players for your front seven. Because if any of your front seven members get injured, you want some competent people behind them. I think DT is the only thing they don't really need any depth at. Next, AFC North. Baltimore, pretty simple, wide receiver. Don't really need to go much further into that. The rest of their team, I think, is pretty good, and they don't really need anything else. Obviously, they have 7 picks, so they can just add depth, but Ravens is definitely wide receiver. Bengals, you can go just about anywhere here. I'd say at least draft 2 linemen during the draft to make sure that line is fortified for Joe Burrow not to get murdered in 11 games again, as well as potentially getting him a younger tight end to basically just have a developable piece alongside Burrow for the next, 10 years. Browns, they're not really that far away from being a championship team right now in terms of at least getting to the Super Bowl. What do I think they need to do to actually get there, though? I think Baker Mayfield's the answer. I think you have a good halfback 1-2 punch. If you do lose Kareem Hunt, which I'm not sure if they have, then drafting a second halfback could be a good option. You have wide receivers. You have a pretty damn good O-line. Now, defensively, I think you need to add at least one more corner and one more front 7 member. Probably, I'd say, linebacker. Pittsburgh, you are in salary cap hell right now. And your offense is going to need all the help here. You need to draft at least one lineman because you lost Marquise Pouncey. And I'd say get one more tight end just to make sure you have 2. NFC North, Chicago Bears quarterback. Simple as that. Think your offense is good, your defense is good, you just need someone that can lead them, and a quarterback is what that would do. Now, mind you bring in the quarterback to compete with Foles and Andy Dalton, so whoever you draft could potentially be your starter. Lions. Lions are a bit of a tough team. I think they just have bad luck. But with Jared Goff now being there and you already drafted DeAndre Swift, you lose Kenny Golladay and don't really have an option to replace him. So I'm going to say wide receiver and a lineman would be where you want to go with your picks. Green Bay, simply put, wide receiver, tight end. I know Robert Tonyan has taken a step up, but you need another tight end, especially if you're going to run the ball with Aaron Jones a bunch. You're going to need a second tight end for 2 tight end sets. Minnesota, defense. The defense has been atrocious for the last 2 years or so, if we're being honest about it. So literally any defensive players you can get, I'd draft those. Next up, and the AFC South. Texans need basically all of the help. They could be needing a quarterback if Deshaun Watson gets traded. They need a halfback that's young and fast. I think they actually did sign Philip Lindsay, so that might not be a need anymore. You're going to need a wide receiver. You're going to need a little bit of line help, and you need a tight end. Those are the positions you need to cover. Indianapolis, you got Carson Wentz, so you don't need a quarterback anymore. I honestly think getting one more wide receiver might be something you can do because T.Y.'s contract is expiring, and if he doesn't put up a good year, you can already have a replacement for him if you decide to let him go. Defensively, I think just adding some consistent players to the front 7 would do wonders. Jacksonville, everything. You're getting Trevor Lawrence. but you need tight end, you need line, and you need all the defensive help you can possibly get. Tennessee is much like Cleveland, very close to just being a contender for a few years. What they need is, I honestly think they just need front seven or secondary help. It's something on the defensive side that they need. I haven't watched enough Indianapolis games to know for sure, but I'm going to say secondary. You need some speed in your secondary, especially if you got to deal with Tyreek Hill. Next, Atlanta. You can go a couple different spots here. If you trade Matt Ryan away, you can probably get a pick to get a quarterback. If you keep Matt Ryan, you can probably use his defensive help too, because their defense has been pretty bad for several seasons now, and you need to fix that before Matt Ryan leaves, or if you trade him away, you need to rebuild that. Carolina has a pretty damn feisty defense. Offensively, they got Sam Darnold. I don't know if he's the answer, but I'd like to see if a change of scenery is all he's needed in order to be a better player than he was in New York. So I think maybe get him one more wide receiver to work with. He has CMC, maybe get him a tight end if you want to get a younger option there. And maybe even a lineman. I think defensively, if they stay healthy, they can carry if they need to. New Orleans Saints is a tough one. They are in salary cap hell, much like the Eagles. So I'd say if you could draft some pieces, I'd say put it on the half and half defense, half offense. Get some youth on the offensive side of the ball for when the other people likely retire or leave in free agency. And get some depth at definitely secondary, get some speed there as well, and you should be fine. Tampa Bay, I actually don't think they really need anything. I think all there is depth, so I'm just going to skip them. Okay, finally, AFC West and NFC East. AFC West, Broncos. It's actually a tough one because they're getting help for Locke, but you might need a little bit more. I'm going to say tight end. And maybe linemen would be your two top needs on offense. On defense, I'd say get another linebacker because Von Miller is probably going to be out of there pretty soon, and you need someone to already be there to fill his spot. Kansas City, simply put, offensive line and defensive line. If you can't get pressure on a 40-fucking-year-old quarterback, you need pass rush help. Oakland, you need a lineman. That's about all I can say. You lost a lineman. I don't know what else they need. I know they weren't great last year, but they weren't terrible last year either. I think fortifying the offensive line and maybe the linebacking core might be your best move. Chargers, linemen, at least one. And maybe some youth in the secondary might help because we have two very old corners, and you need to have replacements for them when they retire and or leave in free agency. Finally, NFC East or NFC West. Cardinals. I have no idea actually for the Cardinals. I think getting your line resituated might be a good idea. Maybe getting one more pass rusher to help alongside J.J. Watt, who you signed out of free agency. LA Rams, it's going to have to be on the offensive side. I think getting maybe some linemen just to make sure that Matt Stafford doesn't have to run for his life. San Fran, I think you're getting quarterback because you traded up. I think getting maybe some certified depth might be a good idea, but other than that, I can't really think of anything San Fran actually needs besides to stay healthy. Seahawks O-line. Your O-line is garbage. I can literally put garbage cans there and they'll probably do a better job. Anyways, that's who I think, or what positions I think each team needs to address in the draft. If you have any ideas of your own of who they should draft specifically, or maybe different positions that need help, leave them in the comments below. And until next video, I'll see you guys around.